What do you do if there's a nuclear event in the region that you live in? How can you make sure you can breathe if you're surrounded by tear gas or riot agents? What do you need to have to live through a biological attack or a chemical attack? Where is the closest nuclear power plant to you? Volcanic ash, fire smoke, how do you make sure you can breathe in those scenarios? How do you protect yourself from radioactive fallout? Do I need to own a mask like this, or is there another way? Today we're going to talk about the gear that you would need to survive a nuclear event, what's extreme and what's essential, and 4 other scenarios that aren't nuclear that you could use the same gear for. This is going to be a cornucopia of apocalyptic advice, so be sure to stick around for the whole video. There can be a lot of fear around this topic, and perhaps you think it may never happen again, like it already has happened 4 times in history. Chernobyl, 1986. 3 Mile Island, 1979. The SL-1 incident, 1961. Fukushima, 2011. Nuclear power plant disasters are terrifying, but they're also extremely rare. With some knowledge, you can greatly improve your chances of surviving a power plant disaster or a nuclear explosion. Fallout from a nuclear event could contain beta particles and gamma particles. Both are very hazardous, but you can prevent them from doing damage to your body if you are able to take some precautions. So if a nuclear event happens, you would shelter in place. You would seal off your doors and windows. If you have a basement, you would go into your basement where there's a lot more concrete that would protect you from direct radiation, and you would wait. You would wait for at least 48 hours before ever going outside. You would monitor your radios that you should have, your survival radios, either single sideband, NOAA, shortwave radio, FM, AM. A lot of these survival radios have them all combined, which is really convenient. In a nuclear event, more than likely the government would be monitoring the air quality conditions, and they would report those to you over the radio. That's what we all assume will happen in a scenario like this. Nuclear fallout contains particles called Iodine 131 or I-131. You want to stay inside for at least 48 hours because the half-life of I-131 is 8 days. So every time 8 days passes, the irradiated particles that are out in the world, floating around or resting on things, are going to have half of the energy that they did before. So the longer you wait, the less hazardous it is to be outside. So you would stay inside for a minimum of 48 hours, up to 2 months, depending on how close you were to the disaster, how much radioactive material is outside at the given time. Now, do you need to wear a gas mask inside your house? Not technically. If you have sealed off your doors and windows and that particulate can't get into your house, you should be safe. If you are going to venture outside after that prescribed time, it's a very good idea to wear a gas mask that is capable of filtering out the particulate that could be radioactive. And you want to have all of your skin covered up, because if those particles get into your skin, they can cause some serious damage and alter your DNA, potentially cause cancer, if not acute radiation poisoning. And you may have heard about iodine tablets before. These help protect your thyroid from essentially becoming irradiated. Your body needs iodine 127 to produce T4 and T3 oils that are essential to your body. Not essential oils, but oils that are essential to your body. T127 can be found naturally in the air and in the foods we eat. The body takes those in and converts them to oils. Now the bad stuff, I-131, the radioactive particle, can also go through your thyroid, and that can cause some serious damage long term. Studies show that the people that are most susceptible are people that are 20 years old and younger. So if you have people that are young in your household, it's a good idea to get a supply of potassium iodide tablets in case of a nuclear emergency. The way these work is these actually load up your thyroid and block all the receptors so that iodine 131 cannot interface with your thyroid. You don't need a prescription to buy these. Just make sure that they are FDA approved. So because these tablets only protect your thyroid, we need a way to protect our lungs, our nose, our mouth, our eyes from particles getting into our body. And that's why we have masks. Masks come in all different kinds of shapes and sizes and compositions and uses. I'm gonna break it down for you as simple as I possibly can. We all know the N95 mask, right? It's synonymous with the pandemic. If you don't know what an N95 mask is, you've been living under a rock, and it's a beautiful rock indeed, and I would like to know where that is. But an N95 mask means that 95% of the particulate matter can be filtered out with that mask. They aren't as good as other options, but as a minimum requirement, I would say definitely have these as part of your kit. A lot of people also have masks like this, the respirators. These are like construction respirators. These filter out a lot of particulate as well as organic gases, acid gases. But you have to be careful because I couldn't find the specs for these filters to see how small the particulate is that it could filter out. So I'm not sure that this would keep me safe in case of a nuclear disaster. But if I had nothing else, I would at least put this on. I've had several gas masks over the years. It's a surplus gas mask. It takes a NATO 40mm filter. This thing is absolutely terrible to wear. It's very, very uncomfortable. It's very claustrophobic. I would not want to wear this for any period of time because you sweat profusely when you wear something like this. As you can imagine, it seals in all the flavor, if you know what I mean. Also, I don't really trust this completely because a lot of the rubber is very old. As rubber ages, it tends to crack and seals tend to be lost. So it's great, they're cheap, but just be aware of their limitations. A huge step up from surplus masks like this would be like this US military M40 gas mask. This is much more comfortable. It has a drinking system integrated into it. It takes the standard NATO 40mm thread size filter. It has a speech diaphragm on it so you can talk and it's a little more intelligible. I do really like this mask. It's still a little bit claustrophobic. I got this mask back in 2010 from the Department of Defense. I was working as a designer on some things, and I don't think this is the standard anymore. In fact, I have a mask that I absolutely love. So my new favorite mask, bar none, is this one right here. This is made by MIRA SAFETY, and this is the CM6M CBRN mask. That's a mouthful. But CBRN just means chemical, biological, radiological, and nuclear. This protects you from a myriad of nasty things, and it does so in a very comfortable way. First of all, the field of view on this thing is absolutely insane. So much better than something like this. This gives you 180 degrees of peripheral vision. When you put it on, you don't feel claustrophobic. I don't feel like I am about to suffocate in this mask. It has 2 filter ports, which is really nice because if you wanted to run 2 filters, it's a little bit easier to breathe and you double the amount of time that these filters last for. Also, you can hot swap a filter without having to hold your breath, which is actually very uncomfortable and a little bit scary. So it uses the standard NATO 40mm filter size. So this fits on old surplus gas masks. It fits on the M40 military gas mask. So if you have a supply of these already, great, you can use them with this. MIRA makes their own canisters, which are exceptional. This one in particular is the special combined filter. This is a do-it-all filter. It'll protect you against chemical, biological, radiological, and nuclear threats. There's a whole gigantic list of probably 100 things that this protects you from, including but not limited to blister agents, sternators, vomiting agents, riot control agents, viruses, toxins, fungi, bacteria, radioactive particles, arsenic, organic compounds, acids, sulfur mustard gas, T mustard gas, Q mustard gas, nitrogen mustard gas, sarin, VX, VR, VE, VG, VM, all these different gases, all these different riot agents, radioactive iodine, and organic components. So this system can protect you from so much and do it in a comfortable way. So it does feature a drinking system so that while you're wearing this mask, you're sweating, you're hot, you're uncomfortable, you can get a drink of water with this here. The canteen that comes with the survival kit has a port on it that interfaces with the gas mask, so you can actually drink while wearing the gas mask, which is really, really nice. It has this lever down here that actually tips the hose on the inside of the mask so you can drink out of it and then you can move it back out of the way, all without taking the mask off. This mask can protect you against intoxication from chemical exposure. It can protect you against infection from live biological agents, and it can protect you against irradiation due to ionizing radiation exposure. MIRA sells all kinds of other PPE equipment that is fantastic. They sell hazmat suits, they sell a myriad of filters that are designed for different specific applications, including a smoke canister, which would be fantastic if you were exposed to a lot of smoke or in a fire situation. These canisters last a very long time, so if you do purchase them, they have a long shelf life. MIRA did not sponsor this video. They sent me this gear just to check out. They don't have any say over the video and they won't see it before it's posted. I do really like MIRA SAFETY products, so if you do want to check out MIRA SAFETY, get some gear for yourself or for your family, check out the link in the description below. So in addition to potassium iodine tablets and a gas mask, what else would you put in your nuclear survival kit? Some people would buy a dosimeter to be able to determine if they are being exposed to radiation. A Tyvek or hazmat suit is also something that you could put in there. That's a little bit more at the very, very prepared end of the spectrum. If you are not planning on going out, you can stay sheltered in place and you don't need those things at all. A roll of duct tape would be very beneficial to tape up your sleeves and around areas of your body that might be exposed if you are wearing a hazmat suit. Tape up windows and doorways to make sure the particulate doesn't get into your house. Having a good survival radio is key. I can't stress this enough. Get one that has shortwave capability, National Weather Service, single sideband AM and FM capability, and one that is either solar powered or crank or both, so that no matter what, you have a reliable source of information that you can tap into during an emergency. Store them without the batteries in them, put them in a plastic bag with some desiccant packets so that you don't open it up 10 years from now and it's completely corroded. You should also have food and water for at least 2 months stored up in your house. Rotate this supply every 6 months to make sure that it's available and fresh when you need it. Another great idea that I don't see included in a lot of survival kits is a stove and fuel. If you get like a backpacking stove and some fuel canisters, this can help you boil water in case you need to, or prepare a hot meal. Nobody wants to eat cold Spam for 2 months. And you should also have a very well-stocked first aid kit and know how to use it. Take some training. Chances are that if you are sheltering in place for an extended period of time, you are going to need to be able to address and treat injuries and sicknesses, and you just need to know how to do this stuff. So who actually needs a kit like this? If you're living in a city, you could be exposed to any number of these threats: chemical, biological, radiological, nuclear, particulate from smoke. It just makes a lot of sense. But if you're out way far away from civilization, out in a rural area, you probably don't need this level of protection, because more than likely you're far enough away from everything that could be a threat. So you have to make the decision yourself what makes sense for you. This is by no means an exhaustive list of things that you need in case of an emergency. You should definitely have home survival kits and car survival kits that are well stocked, first aid kits that are well stocked. You need to pursue training on how to use these items and actually work with them and practice with them. Just learning how to put a gas mask on is its own thing. You can't just put this on. There's a whole method of making sure that it's sealed around your face, doing a pressure check. So if you buy it and don't train with it, then you're doing yourself a disservice. Being over-prepared or under-prepared, I think either extreme could be very unhealthy. There has to be a middle ground that is reasonable. I like the idea of preparing for something and then clearing your mind about it, just forgetting about it. There's no sense in continuing to dwell on it and be stressed about it if you've done everything you can to prepare and to handle it. So to me, that's not an extreme level of preparation. That's a very basic, simple way of preparing for something that might happen. And if you do get a kit like this that is for nuclear emergencies, you can also use it in case of other emergencies as well. Well, I hope you found that useful, or at least entertaining. We'll see you later.